It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com, get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. Also, too, all different kinds of services. One thing I'm going to be talking about later on tonight is a runaway kid, missing persons, and runaway kid investigations. There's no order form for that on the website. You just have to contact me directly and talk to me about it. We'll arrange a consultation. We'll come up with a plan. But that's one of my specialties for sure. I was just written about in a book, Finding Missing People. I forget what the name of the book is, but I was just written about in this book. I'll be telling you about it later tonight. Also, too, hacked email account investigations. If you think somebody's reading your emails, I can investigate that. Harassing telephone investigations. I invented something with that where I can create a trap line for you. You pass your calls through my trap line. We can unblock caller ID block and unblock unknown callers. All kinds of fun stuff over there at emailrevealer.com. Okay, we have, I guess, a returning guest, I guess from Europe, Patrick, who's the director and producer behind Program to Kill, Satanic Cover-Up, which you can find on YouTube. It's like an 80-episode YouTube documentary that's in installments. It's like 80 different ones surrounding all the famous serial killing cases and other public cases. Let's just introduce Patrick and get into this. Patrick, are you there?
Yes, thank you for having me, Ed.
Having you back, you mean? Because we did this before, and the recording didn't save, and Patrick was nice enough to come back. So thank you so much, brother. Tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Patrick. I'm now 29 years old. And when I was 15 years old, I started to become fascinated with the topic of serial killers. And I did a lot of research. It was the early stages of YouTube. So I saw a lot of documentaries, movies, read magazines, books, everything. And I think 5 years later, I also became aware of the conspiracy arena about 9/11, chemtrails, and the mind control. And just by sheer chance, I found the book Program to Kill by author Dave McGowan in a bookstore and took it home with me. And I really thought it was just another serial killer book. But the information that McGowan provides really came to the conclusion that all those serial killers have military connections, mind control connections, intelligence agencies, the occult, Satanism, and secret societies. And those are the topics we're going to discuss this evening.
Military, mind control, Satanism, secret societies, and also biker gangs.
Yes, also, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, last time we did this, we started, I guess, with Paul Bernardo and Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, which I think are three major cases that are indicative of the cover-up of the Satanism behind the scenes. But I'd like to start this time, and we'll get into those, with the case of Carrie Stainer and Stephen Stainer up in northern Yosemite National Park in the United States. You're familiar with that case, right?
Yes, I've listened to your various podcasts, which very much information, very good information.
Yeah, and what can you describe that case for us? It's starting with Stephen Stainer, the little boy that was abducted, supposedly.
Yeah, maybe you can give the few listeners a synopsis. I only know the information McGowan provides in his book.
Well, we've done a couple of shows on this. One with Stephen Sanzeri, who was a bail bondsman, who bailed out one of the characters involved in all this scenario here. And then also, too, with a woman named Dunn, who actually was targeted by these same kidnappers and serial killers up there at Yosemite Park. But the story starts out with Stephen Stainer, the little boy Stephen, who was lured into a car by these adult pedophiles and kept with them for about 10 years. until they went to take another kid, and Stephen took the other kid to the police department. Somehow Stephen was returned home, but he was allowed to, because he was closer to his abductors than he was to his own family. And there's even some allegations that he was allowed to talk to his abductors during the time he was returned back to his home. And there's even some allegations, too, that he was actually given by the parents to his abductors. There's a lot of shady business going on there with that. But what happens is his older brother, Kerry Stainer, goes to work at Yosemite Park and gets arrested for a series of serial killings, serial murders. And he also, the other brother, Kerry Stainer claims he was being molested by his uncle at the same time Stephen was being kidnapped. And then also, too, his uncle turns up dead in an apartment that they were sharing due to a shotgun wound. Okay, is that enough? You know what I mean? What more do you need?
Yeah, there are a lot of hidden connections in the Stainer family, apparently. I think they used the sons for scapegoats in the end, especially Kerry Stainer. And really, if you investigate this case, you really come to the conclusion that there are multiple accomplices directly involved in this case, which were all connected to drug trafficking. But in the end, the only person that was convicted was Kerry Stainer.
Who actually confessed, and that's a common thing that goes on in this whole situation, too. That's a common to the pattern, right? That the guy who they catch confesses and doesn't implicate others.
Yes, and even the last killing, he was sworn by the FBI and prosecutors that he will never confess to the ultimate motive about that killing. So he took the secret to his grave why he allegedly killed someone.
And yeah, that's right. It's part of his deal. He's not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah.
What do you make of that aspect? That with a lot of these cases, they go to their grave without implicating anybody else officially, but they do talk about it in their confessions and different things. They do mention other people who were involved. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I really think it's a case of police corruption and coercion and blackmail. I think there was a lot of drug trafficking in Yosemite Park.
Yeah.
And probably law enforcement was also involved in that. And they took a firm choice to prosecute only one guy and not the whole group, because there goes the money.
Very true, because prior to this murder, Carey had an arrest for marijuana. He had a couple of minor, it might have been meth too, but he had a couple of minor arrests that they just dropped the charges and let him go. So again, hey, what about informants? Do you find that a lot of these other cases that people involved were police informants?
Yes, Fred and Rose West in England were police informants, and also allegedly Paul Bernardo, reportedly. So. And a few others I can't, at the top of my head, I can't remember.
Well, describe the West case. Which one was that?
Yeah, that's a very weird case. It was in 1970s in Gloucestershire, England. And Fred and Rose West had a whole apartment building for themselves with their children. And they were lodging rooms there for lodgers. And basically they were sexually assaulting, torturing, and prostituting his wife for various lodgers and people who were living there in the street. And they continued to do that for, I think, almost 2 decades. And there was also police complicity, because there were also policemen going to the house like a brothel. So.
Right, and they again too. Another thing you left out in your pattern here, you were describing of that military, mind control, Satanism, secret societies, is also snuff films. There are always videotaping involved in these things too, right? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think almost practically every serial killer case, even with in Las Vegas, that guy was videotaping himself. So I don't know for which case. Many people say it's like trophies. They like to see themselves and reliving the crime, but I think it's more sinister type of connection, that there are people in government, the the elites, the secret societies get off on that and want to make money from those videotapes.
Yeah, actually in Vegas here, he had a camera pointed to himself, but they're claiming that there was no recording, that he wasn't recording himself. They're saying he had a lot of electronic equipment too in the hallways, monitoring what was going on in the hallways, but they're claiming no recording. So, but who knows? That story's changed so many times. Now, it goes back again, too, this business about the recording. Because in Abu Ghraib, right, over there, where they were torturing the prisoners, they were recording them over there, too. And there's an allegation that they were sending those recordings to the White House, and Dick Cheney was watching those recordings every night. And there's also allegations that they would, take a suspect from his home and bring him to the prison, and then go and kidnap the guy's wife and kids and rape the wife and kids in front of the guy they were interrogating. Now, which goes back to the Phoenix program. Now how many, describe what the Phoenix program was and some of these serial killers who come out of the Phoenix program.
Could you please describe the Phoenix program? Because you have better English and I can direct serial killers to them.
Okay. And what is your first language?
It's Belgium.
Belgian, okay. I like the waffles, right? I love your waffles over there. Okay. Have you heard of Belgian waffles?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. But I always got to make a little joke. Someone says they're from Turkey. I say, well, I love your sandwiches. Okay. The Phoenix program, okay? And I had Doug Valentine on the show, who wrote the original book, and he had access to the CIA director and stuff like that. It is basically in Vietnam. It was a secret program where they would, again, get tips about people who were North Korean Viet Cong sympathizers, and they would go and kidnap them, take them to these places, and torture them. And they would go to villages and towns and stuff like that and find people who they suspected were sympathizers and cut their heads off and put them on sticks. And this grew into an extortion racket where if someone didn't like a competing businessman, they would go and rat him out. And the U.S. government, thugs and goons like they were, would go in and eliminate business adversaries, drug rivals, criminal gang rivals. And this is what it turned into. It doesn't seem like it's ever stopped. This is an active program because they continue to Abu Ghraib, the same exact thing. So give us an idea of some of the serial killers who came out of that program.
Yeah, for the people who have read Program to Kill by Dave McGowan, he actually said that the Phoenix program was brought home to America because a lot of these guys who were in the jungle were coming back to America and were doing the exact same thing that we're doing in Vietnam. You have the case of the Genesee River killer, Arthur Shawcross, which actually demonstrated that he had surgical intervention in his brains, that they literally were doing surgical procedures to make him like the son of Uncle Sam. You have also the uncle of Richard Ramirez, who took Polaroid photographs and showed them to Richard Ramirez, like what he had done to those people in the jungle. You have the Sunset Slayer, Jack Murray, who was befriended with Douglas Clark, the alleged perpetrator. He was also a Phoenix operative. So you have many cases in that.
Well, describe, let's start with Shawcross. Describe his crimes and what he would do, because he was doing the same thing when he came back, putting heads on sticks.
Yes, exactly. He was going to I think it was the Seattle Strip, and he was going to visit prostitutes. And to his comments were that he was paranoid that they were giving them AIDS and other customers, clients, and he would take their lives. But if you research those killings, it really looked like occult rituals. Like it had more than the most likely killing with strangulation and just stabbing or beating someone to death. So it had an occult ritual attached to it, I think.
Now, that's interesting, too. Another common denominator in this is many of the targets, the victims, are usually prostitutes. Now, do you think that's just because they're on the fringe, they're weak, no one's looking for them, or could it possibly be that they're involved in blackmail rings? Because there's a lot of blackmail and prostitution and escort services. Yes,
that's a very good statement. I really think it's the last one, yeah. I really think that some of those girls were seen with people who were not happy about that and were forced into prostitution and into blackmailing and eventually death, yeah.
Yeah, there's a huge... People have no idea how much blackmailing goes on with escort services. Even the average person will go to an escort and they got your credit card information. They take your license plate down, and then next thing you know, they want money every month from you. They've already looked up your neighbors and your friends and where you work and stuff, and now they want money every month. Now the Sunset. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, there are 2 serial killer cases. The Sunset Strip killer, indeed. There were 2 victims, very young, I think 13 and 14 years old only. And they, before they were killed, they were going to a party at a Hollywood producer. And there were very big stars like Rod Stewart and other people. And there were attendees like 100 people, all very wealthy. And 24 hours later, those girls were dead. And all those killings were attributed to Douglas Clark and Carol Bundy. But if you see the timeline of events, it's more likely that they have did something wrong at that party, that there was going something wrong. It was an all cover-up. And also with the Hillside Strangler, Kenneth Bianchi, Angelo Buono, they also had a prostitution ring. Angelo Buono had an upholstery business. It was more like a front for prostitution business. And McGowan's work stated that many of his clients were police councilmen, law enforcement, and parole officers, and people in politics. So you have really direct connections with upper society and not only random serial killings.
That's interesting. Charles Manson had an escort service too.
Yes, indeed.
Now, the Sunset Slayer, describe what their crimes were. The Sunset Bundy and the wife. Well,
according to the official story, it was that Douglas Clark was going to the Sunset Strip, sometimes accompanied with Carol Bundy or with another young girl, and he would visit prostitutes and performed fellatio. They performed fellatio on him, and he will shot them in the head and dump their bodies and did things with the body, necrophilia and those things. But I know there are interviews with Douglas Clark, and he's really convinced that he's really innocent. I don't say he's 100% innocent. He has done unethical things, but I really think he's innocent of the murders that were attributed to him.
That's interesting. Besides Douglas Clark, how many of these famous cases do the serial killer, do they still claim innocence to the end?
Definitely Richard Ramirez, and he was also found dead, I think, like 2-3 years ago. Yeah. So we can't ever know the official story anymore because he was always appealing his 13 murders. You have Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler. DNA evidence actually proved 5 or 8 years ago that he was indeed innocent, and that the real killer is still at large. Truly unbelievable. Now you have Cary Stayner, you have Herb Mullen in Santa Cruz, California, end of the late 70s. You have John Wayne Gacy. I think he was, they said he killed 33 people, young boys, but I think he's only guilty of 5 people being killed. So.
Yeah, and Gacy's one of the ones, too, that there were definitely other people involved, because when they picked him up, the first thing he said to the police was, "Who else is here? Who else did you pick up?" It's just mind-blowing. Now, well, you mentioned Santa Cruz. What is the deal with Santa Cruz? What's going on up there? Is that like a hub for this kind of thing?
Yeah, McGowan's work actually demonstrated that it's like the capital world of serial killings. Like it's the place to be a serial killer. So I don't know what the hell is going on over there. So, but it really looks like in the end of the 1970s there was Herb Mullen and Edmund Kemper. Edmund Kemper killed allegedly 6 women, and Herb Mullen I think 12 people. And if you really investigate those cases, you really come to the conclusion that most of Herb Mullen's killings were actually contract killings, because the victims were not randomly chosen. They were all filthy. They were all blackmailed, coerced. And Edmund Kemper, I think Edmund Kemper probably did kill some co-eds, because he really made strong statements and really has a recognizable story that has credibility. But I also think there were others involved. I don't think he did everything by himself. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting about Santa Cruz. I've never actually been there. I might have driven through. I know I've driven through that area, going north and south. but I've never actually visited Santa Cruz. But I've looked at it. It looks like a fun place to go, like, for the weekend with my kid. There's a nice beach up there. They got a pier with games and stuff like that and rides. And the motels are very cheap. It's very cheap to go visit there, like for a little vacation weekend, which is very difficult to find in the California coast. But I'm always afraid to go because I'm thinking, my God, this it has this reputation. Maybe that's why it's so cheap. They want to lure you over there, and you never come back.
No, there's one weird thing about the camper case. After he killed his mother with a hammer, and I don't want to say any other thing what he did with that body, but he took a trip to, I think, University of Nevada for unexplained reasons, and then he did go to Colorado with a whole arsenal of weapons, and he really thought he was being in a shootout with police, but after that he just turned himself in. But do you know anything about the University of Nevada, why he possibly did go there? Do you know something about that?
No. University of Nevada has a bunch of different campuses now. Maybe back then it was just one campus. But I've never heard anything too suspicious about the colleges here. Nothing that would jump out at me. Well, one thing's kind of weird. There's this what's that guy's name? The guy who owns all the budget suites, which is these monthly long-term motels where like all the poor prostitutes and the drug addicts go live in. He owns a bunch of them. Bob Bigelow. And he runs this thing called Bigelow Aerospace. He's all involved with Art Bell and looking for UFOs. He bought the Skinwalker Ranch and stuff. And it's kind of bizarre because he has this Bigelow Aerospace Museum. And they do this thing where every single school here in Clark County, Nevada, they take the kids over there for a day trip because it's free. You can go there and they show them a movie. But they always say they don't need parents to go with the kids. On this one field trip, they say, we don't need any help because it's all organized over there and we could take all the kids over there ourselves. And it's just always struck me as odd. So I never let my kid go to it. But if you go there, yeah, it's just for students too. Like if I wanted to go and see this movie, I couldn't do it. It has to be for a school. That's weird. And the budget suites are very... It's an open bazaar for prostitution and drugs, and he's got like 10 of them. There's like there must be a 300, 400 apartments in the budget suites across southern Nevada here. A very rich man gets away with it. Now, you mentioned... go ahead.
Can we step back a little bit about snuff movies? Because there are a lot of information that is really interesting.
Sure.
About the Fred and Rose West case. There were actually rumors that he was duplicating tapes and was selling them in video stores under the counter.
But have any of those tapes ever turned up, though?
Not that I know of. I did read somewhere that they found child pornography pictures, but not videotapes. No, but they, when I'm going out in bars and you meet people from the UK and I talk to them if I have a really fun topic discussion, they really acknowledge to me like, yeah, we heard those rumors, and I can't say I met someone who saw those tapes, but I really can. Acknowledge to you that it's not a story. It's really a fact. Yeah.
Common knowledge. It's common knowledge is the phrase we use. Yeah. Now that's interesting. There's a whole pattern with that. With the videotapes never seem to actually turn up ever. There were snuff films in the Son of Sam case.
Yeah, Leonard Lake case also.
Leonard Lake and Charles Ng, right?
Yeah, David Parker Ray in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico.
Right. And the other, right, because he had a very expensive video camera. That's the Toy Box Killer down in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. And Paul...
And he had a satellite transmitter besides his toy box.
Oh, boy. Yeah, right. We'll get to that whole case in detail, because that's a very important case. But also Paul Bernardo also, too, was taping. And we don't know what's on all those tapes.
Yes, that's really a mystery. I mean, this guy was truly obsessed with videotaping. This guy videotaped everything in his life. There wasn't a day that he wasn't going away with his video camera. He was always videotaping. And I think when he was arrested, they found like 300, 400 videotapes. of course, many of them were taped with episodes of The Simpsons or movies, but we never have showed the contents of those tapes. I mean, he was also a peeping Tom, so and there were also allegations when he was the Scarborough rapist that some of the girls mentioned that that there was a girl with him videotaping the sexual assault. So you have very likely to be that Carla Molk was present during those rapes when she was videotaping this stuff. Truly mind-boggling. I don't know.
And Jeffrey Dahmer, too. Jeffrey Dahmer had a video camera in his place. We don't know where any of those... And they claimed they didn't work. They weren't hooked up. But we don't know where any of those tapes are either.
Yeah, I read all the FBI files on Jeffrey Dahmer. It was really interesting. Very much information. He could account for everything at the apartment, only he couldn't account for the video camera that he bought. He couldn't remember where he bought that video camera.
Oh, very interesting. And then, again, back to Charles Manson. They talk about the night there was a rape, that was a sadomasochistic rape and revenge for a bad drug deal that went on at the Tate and LaBianca house previously that week that was videotaped, and they were making snuff films in there, and they were making child pornography there. Again, it goes back to the video.
Yes. I think it's fact. I think author Ed Sanders did very much information in his book, The Family, and it was. I think it's a fact that Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate were making pornographic videos as long as they were in a relationship, and also with other highly people in the entertainment industry, and also Charles Manson with his girls were making pornographic videotapes at the ranch.
It's interesting, too, that it seems that because you hear these rumors about gay porn and different porn videos, underground porn videos. There's one with Ronald Reagan that they talk about. And somehow they seem to wind up in the hands or pass through the hands of Larry Flint, the publisher of Hustler magazine, who seems to have a big connection to a lot of these things, too, because it was his brother-in-law, by the way, his brother-in-law, who was never arrested, who was involved, who gave the gun to Bill Menser when Menser did a couple of hits. The brother-in-law never got in trouble for this and actually got paid by the cops for giving them information and going undercover and wiretapping. But I've heard the story, and from a very credible source, that Flint wound up with the tape of Ronald Reagan doing the gay porn. You know anything about that? You know anything about Flint?
No, I saw a year ago for the first time The People versus Larry Flint, and I thought it was a pretty good movie. So, but I don't did much research into the real case now. Yeah,
you got to look into that. That connects to all this too. And also, too, it's very interesting how The People versus Larry Flint, who's in there, you got Woody Harrelson with his connections to all kinds of creepy stuff. And who's the other one? Courtney Love with her connections to Epstein and everything, man. She's involved in the murder of Kurt Cobain, all kinds of weird stuff, you know? Jeez. All right, this might be a good time to take a little commercial break. And we'll be back more with our friend Patrick, who keeps his last name private because, this does attract a lot of negative attention, these kind of topics, and it's not the safest thing to be involved in. This series is called Program to Kill, Satanic Cover-Up, and it's very, very well done. There's about 80 episodes. Once you watch it, you're going to sit there and watch all of them, and it's going to take you a couple of days, but it's worth it. And you're going to be in a great mood after it, too. You're going to be it's really going to cheer you up when you watch this thing, And it's one of the reasons why I like it so much, too, because I complain about YouTube videos a lot, is you have to read this. There's a lot of written content in it that you can read. So I think for some reason I appreciate that better. But we'll be back with more Patrick and Program to Kill, the Satanic Cover-Up right after these messages. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and we're here with Patrick, who is the creator behind the Program to Kill YouTube series, Program to Kill, Satanic Cover-Up. And you can find it very easily just if you go into YouTube and put in Program to Kill, Satanic Cover, it comes right up. So Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm back. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because now I noticed because we did another interview a couple weeks back, and then the recording failed. It just froze. My computer froze, and it never saved. So this is our second time. But I noticed after that interview, you went back and you updated some content on your YouTube channel, and everybody's so excited. Oh, you're back! You're back! You know, like everyone was going nuts. Do you plan on continuing the series?
Yes, but I don't really think, I don't know. I've saved a lot of material in the last 2 years, so I just made a big compilation with only video archive material. So that's also like fun instead of reading everything every time.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe in the future, maybe.
Yeah, because that is one of the complaints. Some people, I guess they have a shorter attention span. They don't like to read, and they say, oh, I like to read. They like more pictures. I guess as years go by, people like to read less. But I would encourage you to look into the Ariel Castro case, who kidnapped the 3 girls over there in Cleveland. Has all these elements, where they destroy his house afterwards, and he was connected with the police, and the FBI questioned him, and all these things that go on in every one of these cases.
Okay, yeah, I really have to look into that. If you can send me a link after the show, I'm gonna do my homework.
Yeah, it's like this. You really got to hunt. You really got to look careful because there's a lot of stuff. And there's even another kidnapper who was on his block who lived next door to him. His brothers were arrested first, and they were let go. Fascinating stuff. His daughter was actually friends with one of the girls he kidnapped, and then the daughter stabbed her own baby. Went to prison for stabbing her own baby, and when she was a teenager, she would run away from home and go to that house where her friend was held kidnapped. It's just a bizarre case, man. Now,
can I say a few things about the Russell Williams case in Canada, the colonel?
Sure.
Yeah, I've listened to, of course, many of your episodes. I think at least 20 or 30 of them. But I really like the podcast with that author Above Suspicion, I think, if memory serves correctly. It was a really good show. I really liked that guy. He was really honest and also very curious about police failures and how the military couldn't recognize a man in their midst who was a serial rapist and a serial killer. I mean, I really think that the places that the crimes were attributed in Tweed, Trenton, one of the largest Air Force bases in Canada, I really suspect that place was under the military-industrial complex, like we have in Colorado. Like William Zabel said, we have safe communities. Like all those communities are with law enforcement, with the military, with intelligence agencies. I really think that the Russell Williams case was connected to blackmail and coercion. I really think those children who were their underwear was being stolen. I think there were like 82 break-ins. I really think it was to intimidate those people in those communities. Those are my theories about that case.
And this is the Air Force pilot in Canada who he flew the Queen. He flew all these big important people.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Right.
Fascinating. And you got to imagine how big this is, because in Canada, they only have 27 or 20 or 30 fighter planes. They don't have a big Air Force in Canada. So this guy is one of the few, and he was like a lieutenant, I believe. He was a lieutenant colonel, big shot. And by the way, there's his confession is available on YouTube, where he's just incredibly arrogant and a matter of fact about the whole thing and very confident, and then just confesses and gives up everything that he did. It's just fascinating to watch. But this guy was classmates with Paul Bernardo.
Yes, he did. He was at the University of Toronto at the economics class, yeah.
So now, and then he would be a logical suspect then too in those rapes, right?
Yes, I think after the arrest of Williams, Bernardo's attorneys were coming forward that they said Colonel Russell Williams was also probably responsible for many of the rapes that were attributed to Paul Bernardo, because it was in the 1980s, I think late 1980s in Toronto, and there were a lot of, I think, 23 rapes in the Scarborough area, and it was the exact same time that Colonel Russell Williams was also present there. And I think it's really naive to believe that after he was, I think, 48 or in his 50s, he randomly just suddenly started killing people and breaking into people's houses and stealing underwear. I think if you're really a serial rapist and a serial killer, you have those tendencies. You're starting very early and not when you're 40 or when you're 50.
Right, and not only that, but he was stealing the underwear, then he would carefully catalog them and photograph them in a bizarre way that he was spending pretty much every waking moment when he wasn't working on this hobby of breaking in, stalking, surveilling, cataloging underwear, this bizarre behavior. Now, he was married while this was going on.
Yes, he was married to Mary Elizabeth Harriman, and she was also very educated, very smart. I think she did work for the cancer research funds. I don't know the exact pronunciation, definition. Yeah, it is alleged that she definitely knew more than she let on, because they shared the same laptop where he had all those pictures, and this guy even videotaped his murders. I mean, the whole session was videotaped. When he bludgeoned a girl to death, he was taking photographs of the blood, which was creating a bigger pool of blood, and he was videotaping and photographing that in close-ups. I mean, you can have an addiction or a fetish, but it's really, really, really weird behavior. I don't know how that comes when you're 50 or 50 years old, like that. That doesn't start it like that. I think he was probably in murderous activities while he was in his 20s.
Yeah, because they say this behavior, you can detect it in childhood, with the bedwetting, the arson, and the hurting animals. This isn't something that just crops up in your 50s. But interesting how his wife, by the way, too, so people have contacted me about that and said that she has admitted complicity in civil suits, that there were civil suits, and she did admit that she was aware of something odd going on.
Correct.
So what are the odds then of you got Paul Bernardo at this class, him and his wife doing this kind of stuff, and you got this other character pretty much doing the same exact behavior? Well, what are the odds of that?
Yeah, pretty slim. They were also videotaping their exploits. They were associated with the high levels of government. I mean, Colonel Walter Williams was in the military. You have Paul Bernardo, who was launching a rap career. He had a rap career in front of him. He was associated with the Freemasons. He was a Freemason. He was also he also had money, and people couldn't account for where he got the money from. So yeah,
interesting, because they tried to recruit me for the Freemasons, and it was at a very low point in my life too, when they were vulnerable, and they just swooped right in, tried to snap me up, man. Thank God I didn't go for it. But when they're doing that, they want to know what you do for a living. They want to know, hey, what's your background? Tell us about your family, that kind of stuff. So Paul Bernardo allegedly was earning his income by smuggling cigarettes back and forth across the border. So, what was his front story that he was telling people?
Yeah, I think he was saying that he was becoming a rap artist, and he was also a chartered accountant. So maybe he shared those stories to them.
Yeah, but then the next question would be, well, who are your clients? Maybe I know them. Maybe I can send you some work. So yeah. But now, so tell us about the Paul Bernardo, because there's a whole Satanism angle to that's never touched upon. So tell us about Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka.
Yeah, well, Paul Bernardo grew up in a very dysfunctional home. His father was a convicted pedophile, child molester. He had sex with Paul's sister. Paul's mother was adopted by the Eastman family. And according to her husband, Kenneth, she was raped by at least 3 members of that family. So you have a really sexual abuse team in the Bernardo household. Paul Bernardo's real father was actually a wealthy Canadian businessman. So Kenneth Bernardo was really in fact his stepfather, but he didn't know that when he was the age of 16, because his mother told him that, and after that she always told him he was a bastard, the bastard from hell. And the family life was really unhealthy. He gets sandwiches with ketchup. He didn't get the presents, but there was Christmas. He just was given clothing. I read one time in a book that he was going away for like 2 weeks when he was only 13 or 14 years old, and when he came back, nobody asked in the household where he had been.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so really a dysfunctional home. And Carla Molka, there's much less available. But it's really, it's really speculating. But it is fact that the Carlo Molka family was, they were really drinkers. Maybe you could say they were alcoholics. They really like to drink. And there was also always suspicion, like, how the hell did Bernardo get away with all those things that he did when he was living in the Homolka household? He stayed with that family for like 2 years, or for at least 1 year. And he was also flirting with Tammy Homolka, Carlos' youngest sister, and with their girlfriends, and making really inappropriate comments. So yeah, there are so much indications that the family Homolka knew something, but they didn't come out and say it. So yeah.
And it's never portrayed that way in any of the films about this case. They always come off, the father-in-law, Carla's father was like a weak guy who was afraid of, Paul. But when you hear your version, it's a whole different story. What about Satanism? Because there was a story, too, about how Carla used to put an ad in the newspaper looking for old Ouija boards. She wanted other people's Ouija boards.
Yeah, according to a chronicle, Nick Braun from the book Lethal Marriage, he came to the conclusion, his investigation was that all of Carla's schoolmates told him that she had a fascination with death when she was fairly young. So she was also always fascinated with death, as was Ted Bundy. But at the age of 17, she was reading much true crime books. You have a book called Michelle Remembers. It was the first books about recovered memory and ritual sexual abuse. She was also in a scarification, when you are making incisions in your hand and fill it with nail polish. So really weird behavior. And they had books when they were arrested, a book entitled Ritual Abuse, and some of their victims also had their tendons cut. Like they couldn't escape, and that's just a clear sign of satanic ritual abuse. And also the head was shaved, and one of the first murder victims was also encased in cement. And to me, that sounds really like a method like organized crime and satanic ritual abuse.
And there was a segment of your videos that was never quite clear to me. I never quite understood. There was something about a car crash, where some teens died in a car crash that's connected to all this.
Yeah, it's really weird. On the night that Leslie Mahaffley disappeared, she was abducted. She attended the wake for 5 friends who died in a car accident on Numberside Road 1. And after she was abducted and found dead, encased in black cement, she was buried on a cemetery, which was only 1 mile approximately away from one Side Road 1. And the second victim was Kristen French. She was abducted in St. Catharines and killed and later transported to Burlington, exactly to the same ditch where those kids were have that accident. And she was being dumped in the ditch there on the Side Road 1. So you have 3 instances where that place is just coming back. And also the father of one of those kids that have gone killed in the car accident also committed suicide. You have another guy who also was driving there with his car and also accident to a tree there. So you have at least, I think, 8 people there dead. 8 people on the same spot.
Oh, that's fascinating. You know, because I could see Bernardo and Homolka being attracted to that area, you know, and then because there is something about multiple deaths, especially of youngsters, of children, people young in life, that there's some kind of energy off of that. There's some kind of evil energy that comes off of that. Now what about the death of Carla's little sister? Were they ever charged with that death?
No. It was all apparently an accident. She had too much to drink, and they couldn't account for the huge red mark on her face. So there were many rumors. There were rumors that they were probably freebasing cocaine in the basement. And also, of course, it was the gelatine on a cloth that was put on her face that probably made that mark.
Because Carla worked at a an animal hospital, like a veterinary hospital, which also burned to the ground.
Yes, correct.
Right. Now that's interesting too. You see, a lot of people that are victims of abuse, child sexual abuse, will become vegan later on in life, or they'll go work as veterinary assistants or vet techs to protect animals, and they want to protect helpless animals. They become animal rescue types. You see that kind of thing a lot. Have you noticed that pattern?
Yeah, I've remembered that from the Process Church of the Final Judgment. I think they were an animal society.
That's right. That's a fascinating story that these people, the Process Church, who were involved in the Son of Sam cult, sacrificing German shepherds by every account, later on went to Utah to open up the Friends of Animal Society, which is a big celebrity thing, got a $40 million budget, and I think they're and they are a kill shelter, I believe. So amazing how you can put that kind of a hobby to use, and make money out of it. Hey. What about? Go ahead.
Let's see. Yeah, there were some indications of truly occult. Yeah, let's see. There were also lividity markings on the Christian French's body. So there were many instances that there was really occult involvement. Yeah.
Now, what about? Is that the case? Because I know Bundy. There was a case with Bundy where one of the victims was kept alive for a week, and that he was camping or hunting with his father-in-law. Is that Homolka or Bundy?
That's Bundy, but also Molka, because absolutely right. Their last victim, Christian French, she was apparently, according to one pathologist, held like 15 days in that house. And that house was really not rural, out of nowhere. There were houses beside them. So I really can't believe if she really was being held for 15 days in that house, how the hell couldn't she escape or scream for help?
Yeah, I know. That's always suspicious, too. Now, you mentioned Bernardo, that wasn't his real father. Now, how often do we find that in this case, that these guys are adopted, or that they don't know, they don't have their real father, they don't know who their real father was? How often do we find that?
Yeah, very often. I think, of course, with Ted Bundy, with Kenneth Bianchi from the Hillside Strangler.
Manson.
Yeah, Manson, of course. Yeah, sure. I think also David Berkowitz was also from unknown parentage. He was adopted, right?
Yeah, that's the one that I was going to bring up, because remember, Berkowitz said in his confession, I feel that I was chosen at birth to be the assassin for this cult.
Yes, the executioner, yeah.
He was born to be a killer.
Yeah, what I found truly fascinating is that a lot of those serial killers, I really think, have dissociative identity disorder. They really have multiple personality disorder. So they really became, in their killing phase, truly psychotic. If you look at the case of Jeffrey Dahmer, it's truly demonstrative, really.
But with the thing with though is how many of them pass through the military service, And I could see the U.S. military, having a little, a test, a little checklist. Okay, are you adopted? Do you know who your real father is? Okay, no. Okay, check that off. Then there's the next pattern is they put you to work like as an orderly in a medical facility like that. Well, get them used to blood, get them used to being gored. You know what I mean? And kind of just inch them along, and then put them through the Phoenix program, put them through something similar.
Yeah, I really think those serial killers that we are talking about this evening those are really profiled candidates. I really think, especially David Berkowitz, he was also a profiled candidate. It was really stated bluntly that. Yeah. That they were actually profiled to become part of the military and also with Black Ops and other things. So.
Oh, you know what? I had one more note here about Homolka. The death of her sister. Homolka later on dressed up in her sister's clothes in order to have sex with Bernardo.
Yeah, that woman really was really the killer. I really always thought that she was killing instead of Bernardo. I think Bernardo was a serial rapist. He was getting his fun out of raping girls, but he wasn't a killer. He didn't have he wasn't fascinated by death, and Carla was.
And Carla was had jealousy too, so we can see the motivation, you know, because what would motivate someone? Okay, an accidental death of your sister, okay, whatever, you know, what would motivate you to put on her clothing in order to pretend you're her to have sex with your husband? It's some kind of bizarre fantasy. It's just too extreme.
Yeah, their fantasy was also always two-way sex, but I really think that Homolka was at least bisexual because she was also having sex with many women. Maybe she was also a lesbian because in prison she also had sexual relationships with women. So I think she was really screwed up sexually.
And now she's out. She's free.
Yes, she was released in 2005, and she married her brother's lawyer.
Why did her brother need a lawyer?
No, she married her brother's lawyer, but I don't know why.
Why did her brother need a lawyer, though? Do we know that?
No, I don't know if you understand my statement. She married her brother's lawyer.
She married her brother's lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but why did her brother need to hire a lawyer?
No, I don't understand. No.
Okay, yeah, it must be because I'm thinking you're saying that she married the lawyer who was working for her brother.
Oh no, she had a lawyer, and the brother of her lawyer she married.
She married her lawyer's brother.
Yes.
See, it's amazing how language is little change there. Okay. Now, we were talking about. I guess the pattern, again, of films. We're talking about the toy box killing. Describe Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. What went on down there in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico with the quote-unquote toy box?
Well, you have the person named David Parker Ray. He had a military background, surprise, surprise. And he worked for, I think, $9 an hour as a mechanic. And basically, he acquired a toy box, a dungeon worth with stuff, property and materials like $100,000, everything combined. So it's really a big mystery how he get everything, how he get that. And he was associated with accomplices and also the Church of Satan. He described himself as a master dungeon. It really has much indications that he was involved in satanic ritual abuse, abducting women, videotaping their exploits and selling them. And also, when he was arrested, he apparently had a fatal heart attack when the trial was being held. But I think if we want to talk about conspiracies about serial killers that aren't dead, I think David Parker Ray is the number one guy who I really think isn't dead. I really think they faked his death and now he's in another country doing the exact same thing.
Okay, let's get into that in a second. Because there's a lot. First of all, he called his dungeon there the Satan's Den. There was a sign. Like you said, he had a dish that was transmitting from that building. The video camera equipment that he had, because this was in the early 80s, you can look up online. They show a picture of his tripod, and this is a very professional, expensive video camera. This wasn't something you buy at Walmart, okay, off the counter, you know. This is a professional equipment. And also, too, his own daughter turned him in like 13 years earlier. And then other people in that neighborhood, and in that, everybody's up in everybody's business in those little tiny towns like that. I've had a trailer in Arizona like that, a little tiny town like that. Everyone knows each other. They just show up without knocking. You know, all goes on. And then the FBI came involved, and they had like 100 agents working on this case, investigating this case, looking for other leads and other connections.
Yes, that really proves like there's something else going on over there, yeah. And I also remember I listened to a podcast of an author who have written a book about the case. And he said when he was going to have done his research in the community of Truth or Consequences, he said every a person living there was a drug addict. It was really a drug addict town.
What drug, meth?
Yeah, meth. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now tell us why you think he's still alive and living in another country doing this.
Well, yeah, that's all just conjecture and speculation, but I really think that he did a lot of work for, let's say, the elite, for procuring their little videotapes and doing their things. So I really think he's not dead. I think they just faked his own death. I mean, come on, how coincident is it? Yeah, he going to trial and suddenly has a heart attack and everybody's forgetting him.
Well, yeah, that's another thing too. This is so common that these people at the center of this, it's either a suicide in prison, or even with the Stainer case. Everyone involved with that died in jail. The guy who wrote the book, I Know My Name is Steven, turned out himself to be like a child predator and public exposure, and he died in jail. You know, over and over. How much of that have you found that the guy at the center, the patsy, the guy who's everything targeted, dies either in jail or on trial or heart attack, something like that?
Yeah, I think often. I think the best example is the case of Leonard Lake and Charles Ng.
Right.
Leonard Lake was brought to the police station and he swallowed a cyanide capsule that he had in his bucket.
Yeah, I believe it was in his shirt collar. He had a little hole in his shirt collar with a cyanide pill.
Yeah.
And by the way,
even in Born Identity, like they were triggered to commit suicide.
Right, yeah. But what is that? Because what makes sense though, because the guy was charged with shoplifting. The guy was caught with shoplifting, like a sandwich and a socks or something stupid, and then he's going to commit suicide. Why?
Yeah, I know. If you read documentaries or read books, the official story doesn't add up. It doesn't make complete sense why he committed suicide in such an early stage of the investigation. Yeah.
Or even think, too, it was such a small amount that they caught him with. Why would they even bring him back to the police station? And those kind of things, they give you a desk appearance ticket.
Yeah, I think he was driving a car that was from a missing person. He also had a weapon in the car. So, yeah, they took him to the police station, yeah.
Now, but describe that whole Lake and Ng case, because that's one of the really more extensive ones as well, with the guy was planning bunkers and all kinds with sex slaves and things.
Yeah, Leonard Lake and Charles Ng were both in the Marine Corps. They were both dishonorably discharged, I think, of honorably discharged. Lake was for mental reasons. He claimed to have been in Vietnam and did all kind of shootings, but the army never recognized this. They said he never was at Vietnam, so it's really contradictory what actually happened. And basically, he was supporting himself by selling pornographic videotapes. He was always fascinated by pornography, and he was going to I don't know how you pronounce it, those festivals with a goat that was transformed like a unicorn, and he was taking pictures from children with the unicorn. And later he was married to Clara Lynn Ballas, also named as Cricket. And they acquired a property from Cricket's parents in Wilsey, Calaveras County, and they were making a real-life horror story, like a dungeon and secret rooms with one-way through mirrors, and there was so much stuff that you think, are only two people here responsible for all this, or is there something more at play?
Well, at the very least, we know his ex-wife and his mother-in-law were involved, because they even tampered with evidence and stalled the police, and they were in a video too, where they were talking about it, where he was saying he wanted to create bunkers with sex slaves. So at least that much we know.
Yes, around that time he was already talking about the New World Order and the coming of Armageddon. Yeah, that's also pretty weird. That some of those serial killers always have inside knowledge about what is going to happen, like 30 years into the future. I mean, I've uploaded the last part of my YouTube series, and I have an interview with Eileen Warnes, the killer who was connected with motorcycle gangs. She bluntly stated that the world is going to end. I don't know if she's telling the truth, but she really said in 2019 we have a nuke war. And this is interviewed in 2003, 2002. How the hell did she know that we have those kind of issues at hand? I mean, this what she says is actually true.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of this, yeah, and she also says too, and she goes on and on. You could tell in those last scenes because that video was taken right before her execution, like an hour before her execution, and she clearly lost her mind. And she was talking about how they were using sonic pressure to make her pumping it into her cell to make her go crazy, and then when she would talk about certain things and write about certain things, they would increase the pressure. And if you watch that last video, this is a woman who clearly something drove her crazy. Because there's earlier interviews with her in this same TV show. It was a Nick Broomfield documentary. Yeah, it's very well done. I got my own issues with Nick Broomfield. I was involved with the Shelley Tripp case, and he did a story about Sarah Palin, and he knew about our case. And first he said he believed it, then he said he didn't believe it, then he used it in the thing. And he also portrayed the Palins to be like right-wing Christians when everybody knows that's not them at all. They're a wild bunch over there in Alaska. They're poker games and strip clubs. And so he has his little agenda, so it makes me suspicious about his other work. So I don't know. But what else with the Arlene Warner's case? Because there's a big biker Hells Angels connection to that, right?
Yeah, she was also always connected, associated with the biker scene. Yeah, she never left that scene. I think it was in Daytona Beach, yeah. But I really think in that last interview, she was really speaking the truth. I think everything she said was true. I mean, she was truly outrageous. If you don't know anything about these subjects, you think she's crazy. But I really think she was telling the truth.
And that she was used as some kind of an assassin for some government operation?
Yeah, well, she actually stated that the police already knew she was killing men because she was a hooker, a prostitute, and probably sometimes she was being sexually abused against her will, and she made efforts to kill them. But later they just let her killing people. And some of those people were also military connected and former police. So maybe it was just shooting off the competition, competition.
Right. And it doesn't have to be that she knows the reason why she's killing these people, or what's going on. Because there's people around you that can manipulate you into doing things. There's other people who could be hired and working for the government, that are just putting her in their path, or connecting her up with these people, and then they wind up dead.
Yeah, there are always, I think, at least 20 or 30 different motives for any kind of group, any kind of entity. There's always also the motive that they wanted that she killed people for they could make movies and write books,
right?
And could re-election people in government, in the politics.
Yeah, I think that's the one too, where Nick interviews one of the cops who said that his house was broken into, files that he had and stuff. Is that the same one or no?
That's the same one, yeah. That's also very interesting that he actually just said he was threatened, not by Arlene Warner's, because she was in prison, by the other people who definitely didn't want to have the truth come out, yeah.
Right, and Arlene Warner's was found. She was arrested. It was called, I think, what's called the Last Chance or the Final, whatever bar. What was it?
The Last Resort.
Last Resort, yeah. We're sleeping like on the floor. Behind this biker bar, which is the same biker bar that she first started 20 years earlier. She was staying there. Tragic childhood, too, living in a tent in the woods, being molested by the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, her childhood, it's really, I don't get sympathetic much, but her childhood is really horrendous. It's really sick. Really sick.
And yet also, too, at one point, she was like 20 years old. She married a guy that was 90 years old who was the head of the country club and the yacht club and all this kind of stuff. He was on the board of directors for all these things. A high society character.
Yes, that is right. And then those, I think, are indications that she was connected to to some entity. Some also with Jeffrey Dahmer. Like they were really selected to become something.
Right, just like Berkowitz says, I was chosen at birth. So tell us about Jeffrey Dahmer, because that guy's all over the place, man.
Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer. It's everybody knows Jeffrey Dahmer, I think.
Everyone thinks they know Jeffrey Dahmer, but when you really start looking into it, the guy says himself, he says, he had an altar in his house,
Yeah, Yeah, he had a lot of things. I think as a teenager, he was always fascinated by the occult and Satanism. And I read in the FBI files about Dahmer that he also had a big pentagram in his apartment that was taken out. Only just a big pentagram. He had to hang out somewhere. He had a copy of the Satanic Bible. There was. I think Dahmer was also always a person who was had multiple personality disorder. I mean, his last victim, Tracy Edwards, really said he was in a dissociative state, and he was chanting, and he was really out of his mind. He was not really weird behavior. So I think really, and he was, I think this is the classic definition of someone who is really has some satanic influence around him.
And also he had previous contact with the police, where they let him go.
Yes, on several occasions, police intervened his activities, but always let him go, or he was on parole. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I didn't realize that. Right. So that at the time when they came to his house, when he had the young Asian boy, that young Asian boy was the older brother of the other kid he was on parole for molesting.
Yeah, that's truly unbelievable. I don't think anybody can really acknowledge that was a coincidence. I really think he was deliberately targeting the brother of that guy because he wanted to take revenge. Yeah.
Right, and then I had, I think his name was Steven Spingola, one of the officers from there in that area who investigated Dahmer, and he was trying to defend that, saying, "Oh, well, those cops were so busy that night." But then later on, we find out that there was 3 cops there. They couldn't have been that busy if there was the 3 of them were showing up for this thing. You know, 1 or 2 cops shows up. Okay, fine, they're too busy, got to go because everybody's busy doing stuff. But they had a couple of cops standing around, hanging around doing this. Again, video cameras inside the house.
Yes, he had also a Polaroid camera, and he also had a computer. And there was also been investigation if he did contact some people in that criminal milieu. Yeah.
Well, really, what year was that again to have a computer? What year is that?
It was in 91.
91? Okay, that's still pretty unusual. 91 is,
Yeah, exactly. I think, why the hell did he need a computer? I mean, this guy worked at the chocolate factory and was an alcoholic and, did his murderous activities. Why did he have a computer?
Right,
Probably contact someone.
Yeah, 91, you had to use DOS. It was all DOS commands. You had to know all those DOS commands. There was no Windows back in those days. Now, also, too, Dahmer, there's a story about when he was on a school field trip as a kid.
Yes, that was McGowan's investigation. He came to the conclusion that Dahmer made a telephone call to someone in the White House that they were giving private tours with his classmates when he was going for a school trip over there, yeah. And it really resembles the stories of Paul Benassi from the Franklin scandal. Like he was going to the White House to have private tours and engage in sexual activities with politicians and drug use.
Yeah, and we know all that went on because they actually arrested Frank Vincent, one of my guests, who was involved in procuring those kids. He admits it, so it's not like it's some kind of a bizarre theory. We know that stuff went on. And no one talks about his Satanism, but Dahmer says, I was drinking their blood and I was eating their flesh to get energy and power and to be more popular. This is what he said out of his own mouth, So how people can assign these other motives, it's just contrary to everything we know.
Yeah, exactly. I think that statement also brings forth some credibility to your theories about why the hell do those people those things about videotaping the exploits, drinking blood, killing people. It's like indeed for making them more powerful, like they have more energy.
Yeah, we talked about this in the first interview that got lost. That back in the Old Testament in the Bible, it talks about they had these Asherah poles, and people would sacrifice their children and do human sacrifice at these Asherah poles, and it was for political power. They did this, we never hear that. Oh well, then they figured out it didn't work, so they stopped doing it. Even King Solomon went back at the end of his life. He was worshiping these Asherah poles. So, and then you hear Pizzagate and all these people in power doing this kind of stuff. It makes you wonder. But another pattern that I see to all this lately is these official stories that come out, these official movies, and these official true crime writers who write these books. It seems like some of them are purposely repeating an official cover story.
Yes, that's my same perception of the case, indeed. I think some of those authors they have talked to law enforcement and other entities, and they all stay to the perception that it is all one guy. It is all one perpetrator. There's no larger conspiracy. There's no accomplices. There's no one. So yeah, they for their own credibility, they just have to go their way. Yeah.
Yeah, but just think, the people who read these books, they want to hear new information. They want to hear new theories. They want to hear that it was a conspiracy. That's where the market to sell this stuff should be. So, and even these hack writers that publish out I interview them. They got 20 books out there with every little topic, a 100-page book. They're just pumping them out. And, even these hack writers, you think they would go for the juicy stuff, the sexy stuff, but they don't. They go with the official story every time.
No, I don't know why. I think they playing it safe, maybe. I don't know.
Well, there's the other element too that we've been talking about. So I was just talking to William Ramsey about it yesterday. About there's something about this blood sacrifice. There's something about these type of occult killings where they use it. That they gain some kind of ability to lie, get people to believe their lies, and get other people to lie for them. And I've seen this in the West Memphis 3 case. I've seen it in other cases I've dealt with personally. There's something to that black magic that they do. And we were talking about Matamoros, Mexico, that big human sacrifice drug cult down in Matamoros, Mexico. Did you ever look into that?
Yeah, very shortly. I also thought George W. Bush was involved at the early stage in that. Yeah.
That's what William Ramsey was telling me yesterday. He said that there's a heavy metal rock group called Ministry that sings about it. They have a whole album dedicated to that theory. Yeah. Yeah. That show's going to be playing. It'll be playing Saturday night, man. We get into some intense stuff. He does some good work, William Ramsey. But this whole business. And what about the McMartin preschool case? Did you look into that?
Yes, I did. I've read Program to Kill. Dave McGowan did some excellent research in that. But I want to say a few more things about the Dahmer case quickly.
Sure.
There's also indication that Dahmer was probably harvesting the organs of his victims because author Arthur J. Harris from Jeffrey Dahmer's Little Secret about Adam Walsh case. I think Dahmer is a far better likely suspect than Otto Stool, of course. But he alludes to the fact that Dahmer was in the military in Germany, and he also had a mini refrigerator with a lock on it. And I really think, why do you have that, and what is the reason behind that? And all his victims in Milwaukee had their organs removed at such a surgical style, like truly perfect anatomy, that I really think there are different motives behind that. That he was actually selling those organs.
And you said that he had medical training in the military, right?
Yes. He was first becoming a military police officer and later a medic, yeah.
Okay, now that's fascinating. Now, I told the story a couple of times on my show. I had a run-in with the serial killer Richard Biegenwald, okay, who was like a marijuana dealer and gangster in Staten Island, New Jersey, biker type. He was hanging out with bikers. And I ran into him one day on Staten Island, and he made a joke. He was waving around a shotgun in his mother's house, acting crazy. And then as we were leaving, he made this joke saying, "This is where we bury the bodies." Okay. And I just thought, we just thought he was crazy and making stupid joke and acting weird. Now, I've always wanted to do a show about it, and I found a New Jersey cop, state trooper, who wrote a book about him, and he interviewed Biegenwald's attorney, who's a big mafia attorney back on Staten Island. In fact, he was my attorney for a while. This guy, Lou Diamond. And Lou Diamond told the author of this book that Biegenwald told him, Biegenwald was involved in organized crime, and that's how he was able to get these attorneys to work for him for free. Like allegedly a hitman for the mafia. But Biegenwald told him, he says, all those kids on those milk cartons? He goes, I'm responsible for a lot of those kids, and we do it to harvest their organs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think that's really big business, harvesting organs, and I really think Jeffrey Dahmer saw financial potential in that. Yeah,
and that would explain too how these serial killers. I always make the joke, like, how do they support themselves, and how do they afford to travel across the country to these different places? Because it's such a time-consuming activity.
Yes, that's also pretty, an unanswered question. Yeah.
Which brings us to another a guy, Bundy.
Yeah, a few more things about Dahmer.
Go ahead.
There were two things. Always police say serial killers never know their victims, which is complete false. Jeffrey Dahmer knew two victims from him. He knew Eddie Smith and Tony Hughes. And Dahmer was even listed in Hughes' address book. But nevertheless, Milwaukee Police Department never questioned Dahmer about his sudden disappearance. So it's really weird. And Dahmer was murdered in 1994, and the brother of Eddie Smith was murdered in a ritual homicide in 1999.
Really?
I mean, yeah, what are the odds of that? Dahmer is dead 5 years, and after that, his brother is killed in a ritual homicide.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that one at all.
Yeah, it's all in McGowan's book. He really collected some astounding information, which only supported the fact that these serial killers have direct connections with these satanic networks. Yeah.
You know, Dave did some great work, man. He really did. And around that time too, you know, I gave him a lot of. I used to go when I was on Coast to Coast. I was on John B. Wells. I mentioned his book. Every time I mentioned Dave McGowan, I was doing a big appearance. And I really feel that there was efforts made to put a wall between me and Dave, and I don't believe it. I know for a fact that people are trying to sabotage their relationship, and others who were banding together to work. Me and Cisco Street Love and Maury Terry and all this group, and even Carl, what's his name? I forget his name. And Cisco Street Love is dead. Maury Terry is dead now, and Dave McGowan's dead in the last 4 years. When all this was just starting to get all put together. But back to Dahmer, though. Do you
know the author Peter Levenda from Sinister Forces?
I don't know him, but very strange, too, because I guess he heard me talking about him once. I have my suspicions about him, but he contacted me once saying, I heard you want to talk to me. And I says, yeah, let's talk. Come on my show. Here's my phone number, but never heard from him again.
That's weird. Yeah, I've read his books, and he has also very good information, very accurate.
Well, you know, he's the guy behind the Necromancer.
Yes, but I've only, I think, read Sinister Forces because it includes serial killers. Yeah.
Right, and also too, you know, there's a photo of him with Podesta. Okay,
don't talk to this guy.
Yeah, you know. And listen, I'm suspicious about everybody that comes in, you know. But back to Dahmer too. Now Dahmer was living down in Florida, and like you said, you believe he's the better suspect for that Adam Walsh case, right?
Absolutely.
He's living in a utility room, a meter room where they read the meters for a pizzeria place, and he's delivering pizzas and pizza sandwiches. A dead body shows up at the dumpster 10 feet from his door. Jeffrey Dahmer calls the police and reports that. And not another question about Dahmer's, connection to this murder.
Yeah, there are also unsolved murders in Germany. There were at least 5 prostitutes found murdered, stabbed to death, really, really sickly, at the military base in Baumholder, Germany, where he was stationed. And he was also a suspect in that because, of course, the authorities say, no, he's a homosexual serial killer and he didn't kill people before that, blah, blah, blah. But I've read comments on my YouTube videos that it's very likely that a young man at his age, he was, I think, only 20, 21, he was probably finding his way to becoming sexually aroused by men or women. I mean, he was very young. And also, the roommate where he was shacked with, Billy Capshaw, stated under oath that he saw Dahmer with blood-encrusted clothes and knives with blood on them. So you have very much indication that Dahmer was even killing or raping people in Germany, and that is almost supporting more the conclusion that he was responsible for the kidnapping and killing of Adam Walsh, if he was already killing people in Germany.
Now, why would you think that John Walsh wouldn't accept that conclusion?
I think because John Walsh wasn't he the host of American Most Wanted?
Yeah, that's how he became the host of America's Most Wanted. At the time his son was murdered, he was working as a public relations type of guy, an advertising business.
Yeah, I think he just had to roll the dice and play the game with the industry. I don't think he could pronounce. I believe there's a conspiracy in my son's death.
Yeah, you know, he came to give a speech at a private investigator convention here in Nevada, Las Vegas, and I definitely watched the speech. And the guy who flew him in on his private plane was this guy, rich guy, used to own these big database companies, IRB and TLO, and these big ones. And he was involved in fixing the election for Bush in Florida during that Bush-Gore election down in Florida with all that scandal. This guy was actively involved in it. Two companies, IRB, his company, and ChoicePoint, created a third company to scrub the voting rolls and eliminate anybody who's potentially had a felony conviction and couldn't vote. And all those people were denied voting when they showed up to vote. And then they dissolved the company after that, and they both went their separate ways. And then ChoicePoint got the contract for doing the 9/11 victims' DNA database. It was like $1 billion contract. And also, too, the Finders case, too, they were involved in these database companies as well. Did you look into the Finders case?
Yeah, actually, 48 hours ago, I tried to find some information on the internet, but I never found a picture of those children. Have you ever saw a picture of those children?
No, pictures of the children? No, you're right. I never saw pictures of the children. I remember when the story broke on the news, the first day when it happened, and there was a story on the news. I remember that day. And it always stuck in my head. I said, this is a very bizarre story. And I kept my eye out for it and tried to go back and look it up. But why? But normally they don't show pictures of kids, though, of victim kids, right?
Okay. No.
But you want to know what? It's interesting, too. Whitley Strieber. You know who Whitley Strieber is?
No.
Okay, he's this UFO guy that claims he was abducted by aliens his whole life, and he wrote the book Contact, a very famous book. They did a movie about it. I met him in person once, too. He has very glassy eyes, you know. And he says that he went to that school in Mexico where they were taking the school for brilliant children that they were taking these kids to in Mexico. He said he went to that school.
Do you think he's sincere?
He wrote about it in his book. I don't think he meant to go out of his way and attach himself to the other story. I don't know how sincere he is about all this stuff with the aliens and stuff. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know. But who knows?
That's an interesting statement. If he said that before it happened, like that.
Yeah, we would have to look at the timeline and see whether he said it before or after. But I know he's connected to that school. And, you know, Lavenda has talks about a connection to the Process Church and the JFK assassination. You know that, right?
No, not Process Church and Final Judgment with Kennedy, no.
Yeah.
Please,
Lavenda claims that he lived next door to this Orthodox Catholic ministry, and all the guys around the JFK assassination, like David Ferry and stuff like that, they were all bishops in this ministry. They all had this connection to this, and it was incorporated in New Orleans by the same attorney that incorporated the Process Church over there in New Orleans. That's the connection.
Interesting.
Yeah. The more you look, the more you find.
Yeah, some things are just coincidence. It's just normal, but
right.
Sometimes it's just too much.
Right. But coincidences do happen. It's a small world, man. There's no doubt about that. Now, I guess one of the strangest cases out there is Ted Bundy. Has all these connections.
Let's talk about Ted Bundy. I think Ted Bundy is responsible for, I think, a dozen murders. I think he's really, to my knowledge and opinion, he's responsible for at least a dozen homicides. but he's been attributed like 36 murders, or some detectives, Bob Keppel even said 100 people or 150 people.
Wow.
But I really think that Bundy was involved with group activity, with cult killing, I think, because some of the victims their bodies were found totally drained of blood. Like there was not one drop of blood in them. Some victims were keeping for a long period of time, like you said, for like a week. Yeah. And also, I think he was really a scapegoat. I think for the Carl Meka murders, there wasn't really any evidence that really proves that he was guilty of it. I mean, the whole dental issues about his teeth, it was truly fabricated. It's a stated fact that it was manipulated. It wasn't accurate.
There was another case too where the girl changed her clothes.
I can't remember.
Yeah. This whole thing where like he would change their clothes or go back to their apartment and get clothes and change their clothes and change their makeup too after they were dead and have sex with them after they're dead. You know.
Yeah. I think maybe we can start about Bundy's childhood.
Go ahead.
Maybe with childhood you can further find indications of behavior. Yeah. I think, Ted Bundy was illegitimate. He didn't know his father. There are many rumors, which I think is true, that his grandfather was actually his father, and his sister was actually his mother. And he had his stepfather and was growing up just exactly the same scenario like Jack Nicholson. He really believed that his mother was his sister, and his grandparents were his parents. And I think you're really going mad if you are pretending to be a brother if you know it's your mother. I think it's not really normal circumstances.
Right.
And there's also two childhood friends of him, Sandy and Doug Holt, who wrote a book, Ted and Ant, The Mystery of the Missing Child and a Neighbor Ted Bundy, about the mystery of Anne Byrne. And they said that their father was sexually abusive to them, both. And their father most likely have sexually abused Ted at Boy Scout camp. So he was maybe sexually abused at a young age. And at a young age also his aunt told a story that on several occasions when she was asleep at bed, he would come into the room and put all knives around the bed with the blades towards her. And when she told this to the family, they all ignored them like it was nothing no, doesn't matter. So this is really extreme, difficult behavior. I mean, a child of 3 or 4 years of age that demonstrates that kind of behavior really witnessed some creepy shit around that family household or anything else.
And Bundy was a peeping Tom as a child?
Yes, he was also canvassing the neighborhood, peeping Tom, drinking alcohol. He was also an excellent shoplifter. This guy was truly the perfect shoplifter. He could steal everything. He would steal everything: food, plants, TVs, a rug, everything, art.
Really?
Yeah. There's also a story of those two childhood friends that he would take young girls to the woods and try to remove their pants and then urinate on them.
Really?
So that's also really weird behavior. Really, many people have to read that book. I'm not trying to promote anything, but it's really a demonstration of early behavior of Ted Bundy, which clearly indicates of him being a serial killer, of being not in his right mind.
Yeah, send me a link. Do you have the contact information for the authors?
No, I don't have. I only have the PDF file.
Yeah, I'll try and find the authors, man. And also, too, a satanic connection, too, is he would remove their heads, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he always only found skulls of the victims. Yeah, but the most really when these murders started at Seattle, I think 1972, 1973. There was a complete lack of information around law enforcement. They all said those girls just vanished. The earth just swallowed them up and they disappeared. These are to me really indications of occult activity. Like there is something happening, but nobody's talking about it. Like we don't want to talk about it.
And he also had political connections.
Yes.
He acted as a driver for the lieutenant governor. And he said himself that he had help during his jail escape. He says, well, there were others involved, you know?
Yeah, I really think Bundy, really think that most of those girls that were disappearing around Seattle, Utah, excuse me,
yeah,
they were, I think, ritual sacrifices. They were really sacrificed for local covens or something like that, around that. And also drug trafficking, because there are a few abductions, I think, of Debbie Kent and Carol DeRange that were not really around the same geographic proximity. So it really couldn't be Bundy at the same day abducting two women, because it wasn't, the time frame doesn't add up. But they were always hammering like it was elusive Ted. It was elusive Ted.
And he also says, too, they asked him what happened to one of the heads, and he started talking about, well, there's other people that are more efficient at doing this. They have a furnace in their basement. And then he says, and then went back to him and says, well, how did you do the head? And he said, he threw it in a fireplace, you know? But he talks about other people being involved.
Yeah, I really think that Ted was really narcissistic, and he was also a law school student. He really thought he could work his way up through the judicial system. But if you really, McGowan did really good investigation in Ted Bundy's case. If you really look at his first conviction in Utah, the attorney, the judge, and the public defender were all school friends at the University of Utah. This guy, Ted Bundy, was completely railroaded at his first trial, because the public defender and the attorney and the judge were all friends of each other. So there was a complete bias against the defendant.
Oh, really? So, but
Yeah.
you don't think he was guilty of that one up there in Utah? There was the attempted abduction.
Really, no. And if you look at the evidence, there's almost only circumstantial evidence. There's not really any evidence that really demonstrates his involvement.
That's interesting. Okay, then whoever framed him on that would have to know that this guy was up to this kind of activity, though.
Yeah, what I did know is that the killing which he was convicted for was Karen Campbell, and she was found in the ski resort somewhere, and her husband was a doctor. And then she also had a physical altercation on that same day she was found dead, and it was the elusive death according to law enforcement, but who knows?
She had a physical altercation. You think that was with her husband?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
There's one more thing about the Kyle Mega murders. All those girls were found dead in at least 12 minutes. Two girls dead, 3 girls sexually assaulted. All perpetrated by one guy, which I found very unlikely. One investigator said under oath in the trial, Ray Crew, he testified in court that the body of Lisa Levy was cool upon the touch of discovery. I mean, she was dead, according to the official story, like 50 minutes, and then the police came. How the hell could that body be cool? This is, for me, an indication that she was already dead when she was laying in bed, and they were orchestrating other murders and other sexual attacks to cover up that homicide, I think. Because there's no other explanation why that body is cool upon the touch of discovery.
Do we know what the temperature was outside when they discovered it?
Let me think. No, not to my.
Okay.
No.
Let me ask you a question, because you think we covered everything with Bundy?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Because 3 times as you've been talking, I've written down Richard Ramirez to ask you questions about Richard Ramirez, and every time I keep forgetting. So now, you have a theory that Richard Ramirez is not involved in any of those murders, or not involved alone. What is your theory about Ramirez?
Well, in the last part of my YouTube series, I showed an interview with him, and he said bluntly to the interviewer that he was appealing all 13 murders. So if he's appealing all 13, I really think he's innocent of all 13. This guy was really a prime example of being a scapegoat, a patsy.
Now, but you listened to the interview I did with Kelly Bonansky, who used to talk to Ramirez on the phone?
No, I can't remember that you said that last interview, but can you say it again, please?
Yeah, because what happened was she became a telephone pal with Richard Ramirez when he was in prison. And she said that she would ask him about the murders, and he says, oh, yeah, that was all Satanism. That was all for Satan. And then he would change the subject and go on to different things. But I don't think he ever denied the murders to her, and to her at least. I'll give you access to all that after the show's over. I'll send you a password so you can go listen to that stuff. There's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, I can remember in the McGowan's research, he also extensively investigated the Ramirez case. And there are many physical descriptions that didn't add up to the physical description of Richard Ramirez. They all said it was someone else. So, and also the victims were not, I think, randomly chosen. They were really deliberately targeted. There were drug trafficking connections. There were law enforcement connections. There were Freemasonic connections. I mean, those are not all coincidental.
Yeah, wasn't there one of them was organized crime too? That they were organized crime family.
The Zara family. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brandon, didn't they have like guns all over the house when he got in somehow? You know. Yeah.
Almost like the BTK, Dennis Rader, the Otero family. He also warned his family for a coming attack. So yeah.
Yeah, we talked about BTK last time too. You know, it's hard to do a second interview when you've done one already. You try to recreate the same interview because you don't want to. You kind of hesitate. You shorten your answers with everything. It's this. Well, I don't ask the same questions. But BTK, we talked about that. That is such a. There's so many things with that. Like first of all, the business of all the photographs that supposedly he took of himself. Can you describe that?
Yeah, I've looked on those photographs on the internet, and it really is highly unlikely that he was doing this all on his own because, like you said in the last interview, he was buried in sand and taking pictures on a tripod, allegedly, and he was had ropes around him, and he was literally dangling from the floor somewhere, making pictures. So yeah.
Right, he's buried into his neck. He's buried up to his neck, and he's bound and hanging from, like you said, taking pictures taken from behind. You know, some of the stuff you can do with a timer on a camera, but my God, how do you untie yourself? How do you unbury yourself?
I saw. I think 5 weeks ago the documentary of the Otero family that young man, the last son of the Otero family, makes statements about that he really believes that Dennis Rader wasn't the only one responsible for the killing of his family. Yeah, very good documentary.
Yeah, he talks about how there was a chair placed in front of the bed, and so that his father was forced to sit in that chair and tied up in that chair and watch his children being murdered. And that also, too, that at one point his father's hands were untied. And in order for him, he says, well, why would you untie somebody's hands? To force them to sign something, you know?
Exactly, yeah. And even the investigator of BTK, who was also interviewed in the documentary, acknowledged the son's theory that he may be right, yeah.
And BTK himself says, what do you call it, that... he says, well, you were holding the gun on them the whole time? He says, well, except when I was tying them up. Yeah, like, what do you do? You put the gun down? Like, it just makes no sense.
That's also if you believe the official story about Carrie Stainer, that he abducted and take hostage of these 3 women with one gun, is also very unlikely. I mean, and also with Richard Speck in Chicago. I mean, one guy murdering 9 nurses and raping all of them one by one. I mean, that's who believes that?
Well, or Bundy getting into that sorority house and murdering them all one by one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's the same thing over and over. Now, but back to BTK. You don't believe it's BTK stands for bind, torture, kill, right? Well, what do you think it stands for?
Yeah, I've read somewhere that it's also an U.S. Air Force squadron term. It's entitled Born to Kill. Like the helmet on Full Metal Jacket from Stanley Kubrick.
And just like, what's his name? Berkowitz said, Born to Kill. You know, born to be created to do this. Yeah, so BTK is just so obviously, now he's alive today in prison, right? He hasn't suicided himself yet?
No, he's still alive. He always said he had an illness called Factor X, which he described as a reptilian frog he saw before him. So, also pretty interesting statement about reptilian frogs and Factor X. Now we have the Factor X live music singing with the children.
Yeah, very bizarre, man. Very bizarre. Oh my God. Now, what do you? How high do you think this goes?
I really think it's all linked with secret societies and the upper echelon of government structures like military industrial complex and things like that. I really also appreciate the theory you have about why are those people are doing this, also those shootings. Is it because of some kind of energy? Is it some kind of blood oath to have people lying for each other? I really believe that is an accurate statement. I really believe that also, yeah.
Yeah, and I believe, too, that our own government, the U.S. military, uses black magic as part of their arsenal of weapons, you know, in dominating the whole entire planet. You know, we just hearing this thing how we have all these soldiers over there in Niger, you know, who even knew? But, you know, we got soldiers operating everywhere, man. With no accountability, no underground, no, it's all in secret. So
yeah, we should also discuss some fun topics in the future.
Yeah, we should, man. And yeah, no, because you're 80 episodes. How long? Do you know how long it takes to watch the whole thing? Have you ever timed it out?
No, I hope that you did, because you saw it all at once, you said?
Yeah, the only 2 times I've ever watched it. Well, the other times, you know, you run across it, I'm researching something else. But the 2 times I sat down and watched the whole thing, it took days. It took more than 2 days to sit down and watch the whole thing.
I think we're ready for 9 hours of entertainment, yeah.
Yeah. And it really is when you lump it all together in one sitting, it is eye-opening. The patterns you see. What about, we didn't even get into the biker gangs pattern, because that seems to be everywhere too. There was this one, it always sticks in my head, that they had like a farm and a bar, and that they had all kinds of, they had refrigerators with human parts and stuff, and there was bikers involved. I don't know where that was, though. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it was Robert Picton case in Canada, yeah. It is really a big case. Robert Picton was with his brother Dave, not very popular, and they didn't have a lot of money, and later their parents died for just of natural causes, and they sold a piece of land, property, and they really received like a few $1 million, a few million Canadian currency, and they really started to give pretty big parties on their property called Piggy Palace. And it was really a charity work, and all people came by, law enforcement, people in politics, also different entities from motorcycle gangs. And yeah, it really became too much. And yeah, it is not really proven, so it's just speculation. But the story goes that there are maybe hundreds of Native Americans were tortured there and killed, and even their flesh, meat, was sold there.
Yeah, they were making sausages out of them and giving them to their friends. Yeah. Now, we're almost toward the end of the show. We're almost out of time. Now, you were saying some things off the air about, you have a theory about Harvey Weinstein?
Yes. I really believe that Hollywood was being under pressure. For example, the last documentary, which really exposes the underbelly of Hollywood, was An Open Secret.
Yeah. And
I really think this is all a smokescreen, because they have to come forward to make some kind of statement about pedophilia and sexual abuse in the entertainment industry. And I really believe Harvey Weinstein is just a patsy. I think he already knew, like months before it happened in the news, that this was his stepping down of the entertainment industry. I mean, one of the most prominent victims, which is alleging his conduct towards her, is Rose McGowan. And Rose McGowan, the actress, was also a participant, a member of the Children of God, an occult. So it's all those links are really weird. I think it's not really coincidence in any case.
Yeah, and Children of God, that was River Phoenix and Joaquin Phoenix were in there as well, and all their connections, all kinds of stuff, the Viper Room and Johnny Depp and everything we know about them.
Yeah, I think they really said let's talk about sexual abuse in middle-aged women and not children. And it was, yeah. If you see an open secret, you see it. It's more applied with children than with older females, yeah.
Right, because in Open Secret, they talk about this digital entertainment network that was created in the late 80s, early 90s by these two teenagers, two little boys, okay? One of them was actually underage, was this older teen went to his house and got custody of him and brought him back to his own house. They had a mansion called, I think it was called the Embassy or the Ambassador's Place or something like that. And David Geffen gave, and several others, Brian Singer, gave these kids $150 million. One of them gave them, but the other one gave hundreds of $1 million so they could create their own movie studio and have auditions and a lot of TV series on the internet that no one could watch because computers were too slow back then. But they had their own movie studio where they were doing auditions and creating films and TV series and interviewing little boys and taking films of them and having these wild parties where these investors could go to the parties and get in the hot tubs with the little boys at midnight. They were all this is all documented in lawsuits all over the place.
I know, it's really eye-opening catcher, the documentary. Very good documentary.
Well, you know what? Even I have my suspicions about that documentary, too. That again, it's just like you described. It's like a little loss leader, where they give you a little bit of information, a limited hangout, where they give you a little info, but they're really covering up the big stuff. Because, what goes on is just notorious, especially with everyone knew about Harvey Weinstein. Everybody knew this story. In fact, one of the lawyers I worked for was involved in some lawsuits that got settlements, years ago. So this is widely known with Weinstein, at least, and what other producers that people know about and things going on. But you're right. If they do an official story now, if they do the Harvey Weinstein movie now, and they've already done a couple. He was in an episode of Entourage, a story about a character based on him. There's another documentary called Overnight about Troy Duffy, who got an overnight sensation and talks about what happened with him and Harvey Weinstein. So the stories are out there, but the stories about this systematic pedophilia going on is not public and should be.
Yeah, it's all kept under the rug, under the carpet.
Yeah. All right, brother. We only got a few minutes left. What do you want to leave us with?
I encourage people to watch Program to Kill / Satanic Cover-Up on YouTube, and also to go to centerforaninformedamerica.com, Dave McGowan's website. It's being hosted by his sister, so people really should check that out.
Yeah, that's actually his daughter. His daughter, he gave custody. He gave it to his daughter in his will. So and while that stuff is still up too, because a lot of it sometimes gets taken down, they have plans to do different things with it. So people should really get that as quickly as they can. Any story we didn't cover though that you want to cover real quick? You think's important?
Let's see. No, I don't think so. No.
Got everything? Listen, thank you so much, man, because I know, the first recording destroyed, and I begged you to come back, and then you had a thing to go to, and I begged you to come early in the morning. We're doing this like 8 o'clock in the morning. So, Patrick, thank you so much, okay? And anything comes up you want to promote, give me a call. We'll put you right on the air.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for everything. And I have one good quote for everyone.
Yeah.
Once there was only dark. If you ask me, the light is winning.
Amen. Amen. Hey, what about you? Do you have any kind of faith? Do you have a personal relationship with God?
No, I'm agnostic.
Agnostic, okay. All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Good night. All right, there you got Patrick. Great guy. Program to Kill, Satanic Cover-Up. Incredibly well done. And it basically gives credit to Dave McGowan throughout the whole series over and over. It's on the YouTube channel. Verbally, he does it. In fact, that's how I found Dave McGowan, by the way, is through this video documentary series, which I can't praise enough. I found this and I watched the whole thing from cover to cover, and then I found Dave McGowan, and then I brought Dave McGowan on the show, and then I started mentioning Dave McGowan on Coast to Coast and John B. Wells, and and got him booked on those places. I hate to say it, but and then really bizarre organized meddling to sabotage the relationship between me and Dave McGowan, especially at the time when Cisco Street Love was still alive and Maury Terry was still alive and all that kind of stuff. And then these weird people who inserted themselves into my life and really stalked McGowan in his hospital bed when he was dying of cancer. And a very bizarre story in order to sabotage our relationship, which was only doing good as far as I could see. I think I did as good for him as I could. Although you got to think too, if he was killed, God forbid, that maybe by giving so much exposure, it was possible cause of that. Anyway, Program to Kill, Satanic Cover Up. If you can watch it from beginning to end, great content in there. A lot of it comes out of Dave McGowan's book. I just did after the show tonight, if all goes well and we don't lose this tape again, because. By the way, the first show we were supposed to tape with Patrick was the Sunday of the Las Vegas shooting. We were supposed to tape in the afternoon, then that night. So I was watching 80 episodes of this, and then we had the Las Vegas shooting where I was up all night, and then we had all that horrific stuff going on the next day to keep my kid home from school, and we had all that going on, and, so, it was just, and it's just this program has just been, this interview has just been under attack in so many different ways, even before we started it.